Okay.
Everything looks good. I'll go mute on three. One, two, three.
This is Frank Islam, Chairman and CEO of our investment group, and your host of Washington Calling, where we interview leading voices from business, politics that impact you, the viewer. Today, we are fortunate to have a distinguished guest, Mr. Shobit Arya. Mr. Shobit Arya is the founder of one of the largest publishing company in India. So, welcome to our show, Mr. Arya. And how have you been? And
Thank
thank you
you.
for all you do to make a difference. And thank you for your leadership.
It's wonderful to be speaking with you. I've followed your work, and it's very inspiring and very admirable what you've done. So it's a pleasure to be speaking with you.
We have a short time on this planet of Earth, as President Kennedy once said, and you have to do what you need to do to make sure you can make a difference. And to whom much is given, much is expected. So, Mr. Arya, you head one of the India's largest publishing company. Can you tell us the size of the Indian publishing industry, and what kind of books do you publish? So tell us a little bit about that also. And is the Indian publishing companies are thriving or surviving?
That's a very relevant and topical question. Before I move on to that, I'll tell you a little about Wisdom Tree. Wisdom Tree is an independent, or rather a fiercely independent Indian publishing organization. We are now going to be celebrating our 2 decades this year into publishing, and the journey has been extremely precious and elevating. We've won awards on the way. We've really privileged to have published some of the most influential minds globally, including the Bharat Ratna Ravi Shankar, the much loved Paulo Coelho, uh, Shashi Tharoor, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I could go on with all the names, but that would take away most of the time. So I'll now come back to your question about the size of Indian publishing. Indian publishing in the last few years has really grown, and when it comes to data, using and collecting data, it's in India especially, it's like petting a grizzly bear. Not only is it a difficult proposition, but even if you somehow manage to do that, it can be quite unpredictable. I will still hazard a guess, and I'll talk about what we call the trade publishing, which is about the fiction, non-fiction, and children
Oh,
books that you would usually find in a bookstore. um, I think we are around 1200 to 1400 crore industry, which is like 160 to 170 million US dollars. And just on the side, American trade publishing would be about 16 billion US dollars. So
right.
we still have a long way to
Long way to
march into
go.
that.
Long way to go. Am I correct to assume that India is the third largest publisher in the English language and fifth largest publishing market in the world? Am I correct to assume that?
It is. In fact, for all we know, we may already be the second largest, leaving behind the United Kingdom. But there's a context to it, which is that when we say that India is the second or third largest English language publishing country, it also includes educational books, which means it also
Okay.
includes school and higher education. And we have to keep in mind that the UK, the population is 67 million, while Indian population is 20 times more, at 1.3 billion. So that puts in some context to that.
Well, as I understand, the India's publishing industry is about close to $7 billion, and 25% of the book you publish in English. And as I understand, you publish about India publishes about 250 books every day. That's a phenomenal. That's
It
what I
is. It
understand.
is. In fact, India is a large country, and we have so many languages. The
Yes.
vernacular languages are strong. They're vibrant, which it should be. And in fact, we are hoping that the vernacular languages will come up even stronger.
Okay, hopefully. You look at the brighter horizon even when you endure the storm. So tell me a little bit about what's the future of the printed book? Do you think the book sales in India have gone down uh, because of the digital era? And do you produce also ebooks? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So the Indian experience has been very, very interesting and typical, because within one generation of time span, we actually saw three generational shifts in book selling. We started out largely as family owned independent bookstores till about almost the first decade of 2000s. So within a decade, we shifted from family owned bookstores to large chain stores to e-commerce and e-books. Nowhere else in the world would such rapid change happen in so little time. And all this happened actually even before the publishing industry had really matured. So it is bound to create disruption. There has been disruptions in the last decade or so. So amongst the most informative and meaningful part of publishing is what we call the mid list, which is the non-bestsellers, which would be meaningful books, which would be books that people would really enjoy, and they would lead to contemplative phenomenon.
So
Those kind of
can you get the book on Amazon ebooks?
Yes, so incidentally, Wisdom Tree was the first Indian publishing organization
Okay.
to have put out books on Kindle. This
Oh,
was
okay.
much
Yes,
before
which I
Amazon
do
came to
subscribe.
India.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was actually much before Amazon came to India.
I
But
agree.
incidentally, in ebooks in India haven't really taken off. There's still only about 2-3% of the actual book sales, while in a country like America, it would account for almost 20%. And it is
I would
another
say,
matter that
yeah.
even in the US, the sales of ebooks have reached a sort of a plateau. So yeah, that's another interesting journey which is happening with content, both printed and ebooks.
So the younger generation, which is the people who are under 40, do they eat? Do they read the ebooks or do they read the printed books? And what kind of a books do
It's
you
large.
usually? What kind of books do they usually the younger generation read?
It's largely still printed books, which at one level is very heartening, because the charm of printed book is very different from an ebook, and that's a debate which we can discuss later. But the younger people are still largely with printed books, and I think one of the reasons could also be that books in India are very competitively priced. When you would compare them to a book in the US or UK, our costs are almost one fourth. So the selling price of a book, which may be $4 US in India, the same book may sell between 15 to 20 US dollars. So because of the competitive pricing, I think the attraction towards ebooks is not as much as possibly say in the US.
So, what kind of a books on India sell around the world? Is it Indian literature? Is it Indian travel books? Is it Indian culture? What else? All kinds
Yeah,
of books.
so all kinds of books, but I think what we are known for the world over is our core spirituality, our holistic health, like yoga and Ayurveda. Those of course are perennially attracted. They've been attracting readers from across the world, but of course, Indian textiles, Indian crafts and culture, and even literature. The literary fiction is something that find takers again all over the world.
Wow. What about the book on science, technology, and engineering? STEM.
No, those are areas where we still need to do some catching up. Um, uh, And I think in the next maybe decade or so, when we see more research and development happening in India, because after all, literature is a reflection of the state of the society. So when we see more R&D and more technological innovations happening from India, I think literature will also keep
Okay.
pace with that.
Okay. I think can you go back to your question again so we can we did not hear your answer, Mr. Arya. Can you hear us?
Which part you're talking
About
about the
the
science?
book, the science, technology, engineering book, right? Can
Yeah,
you
so I
go ahead and
was
explain it
telling that,
again?
yeah, sure. So I was saying that, after all, literature is a reflection on the state of the society. And as we see
Okay.
more research and development and technological innovations happening from the country, we will also see the literature will keep pace with that. But I think the ecosystem for technological advancement and scientific advancement first needs to mature in the society, in the country. And I'm sure we'll see lots and lots of scientific literature coming from India and finding global readers.
Okay. So how do you go about promoting the book? So let's suppose I wrote two books, but it was a self-publishing that I do. And mostly they were American, renewing the American dream, and also the pivot point, how to move America forward. So we couldn't get a publisher, so we had a self-publisher. Do you also do self-publishing as well?
Uh, no, so as a policy at this point, in the last
Okay,
two decades, we've survived, in being a conventional publisher, wherein we
I
take
got you.
pride in the fact that we don't insist on any author buying a single copy. We only
Okay.
publish when we merit in content, and if we feel that we can work together with the author to create a content which will find a market, or even at times when it may not find a huge market but will fill a gap which needs to be filled, um, we definitely go out there and publish it.
Do you sell books in America and Europe? If so, what kind of book do you sell? And do you have distribution channel in North America and Europe?
Yes, again, in fact, we were amongst the first Indian publishing organizations to create a full service distribution in North America, in UK and Europe, and other English speaking countries like Australia.
And
Um,
New Zealand.
Again, and New Zealand, and again, books like the ones on spirituality, on Ayurveda, on Indian textiles, do reasonably well in all these markets. And of course, if you have authors who are based out of a particular country, so for example, we've published the Michelin star chef Vikas Khanna, whose
Hmm.
books have done well in the US, or we've done Shambhavi Yogini, who does speaking tours in the US. So
Okay.
authors who travel and who are based out of a particular country, their books do better than, if you're of course not based in the US and you're based in India.
So do you buy rights of American European publisher to sell their books in India? How does it work?
So while the core of what we publish is books which would have some kind of an Indian essence, and that is how Wisdom Tree was started. That we would publish books with Indian essence and take them globally. But at the same time, we do collaborate with publishers from across the world. While our own books have been translated into almost 20 countries like Mexico, Brazil, Russia, and even countries like Latvia. At the same time, we have bought rights from American and British publishers. In fact, just last month, we bought rights of a book on the Japanese technique of Ikigai
What
from an
is this
American
called?
publisher.
Oh, okay,
It's
okay,
called the ikigai, which is
okay.
finding your true meaning of life. That's a
Oh, okay.
Japanese technique which is gaining popularity. One of the books on ikigai has been a New York Times bestseller. So a Japanese technique, an American publisher, an Indian publisher buying it for India.
So, Mr. Arya, let's suppose I'm an author and I want to write a book. And how
Yeah.
do I go about contacting you? And who does the writing? Do you also provide the editing, publishing, and distributing and promoting and all kinds of stuff? What's the end-to-end service do you provide for people like me who wants to write a book?
So while publishing is what can be considered a set of services, but actually it is much more, because the intellectual contribution that comes from a publishing organization is much more than the process of, say, editing, proofreading, designing, sales, marketing, and distribution, and finally accounting, where the royalties accrued are shared with the author. So, as a conventional publishing organization, we do each one of that with a lot of passion and a lot of dedication. And yeah, so hopefully, when you're doing your next book, we could work together.
We have a shared goal and shared responsibility. So we'll work on it. And how do you go about promoting the book in India and the other part of the world, in North America, which is and also in Latin America or Europe? And do you have any distribution channels in Africa also, especially the northern part of Africa?
Um, Africa, we don't have a dedicated distribution. We
Sure.
have importers in Africa who would, at certain times pick stocks from us, but we don't have a dedicated distribution there. As far as the marketing is concerned, we would go out there and market the books to the best of our capability, using both the internet, social media, as well as print media. So we have an in-house marketing team which would reach out to newspapers, magazines, television. We have our social media presence, where in collaborations with the authors we would work together to have the word out there, so that more and more people get to know about a particular book that may have been written.
So tell me a little bit, Mr. Arya, how many books do you produce a month? And what are your success stories? What are the people that you have been able to attract to your publishing company who are the best and brightest in the world are in India? Give me some names.
Uh, so names, I'd started out with some names. So
Yes,
we've published Pandit Ravi Shankar,
yes.
who was Bharat Ratna, and who was equally popular across the
Everyone knows
world.
Mr.
Was
Shankar, right?
Yes, and we were very fortunate that when he was here, we
Allah.
worked on his graphic autobiography, and then we worked with some of the political figures. Like I mentioned, we've published the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. We've published Minister Nitin Gadkari. We have published Shashi Tharoor, although we consider him a politician, but he's been much more than a politician. He's more of a literary
He's a
figure.
pretty smart guy. and and how
And
many books? Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, and we've retained sort of a very boutique and focused style of publishing, where we
Okay.
only publish around 50 to 20 books in a year, and that has been our
Oh,
pace for the last 20 years. So we're now, we have almost 350 books that we've published till date.
so you're pretty selective. What do you publish? Correct?
Yes, we do. We like to focus on what we're doing, on not just editorially, but each aspect of publishing.
So, what sort of a topic of the books that will resonate well with the Indian audience and the audience all over the world, besides the yoga and the cultures? What other books? Do you have any suggestion for the
Um,
audience?
all universal themes, which go beyond the boundaries of a country. So, inspirational literature would be something which is popular across the world. If you look at the largest selling books, um, the Oprah Club, the Oprah Book Club, everything that you would look at, the inspirational literature, something which can be elevating, something which I could gain from as a reader, is what finds attractive leadership across the world.
So before we close our conversation, Mr. Arya, um, tell to the audience why should they go to your publishing company rather than someone else, and how do they contact you in case they want to connect with you and work with you and collaborate with you.
More than asking them to come to us, I think what is of greater relevance is the fact that I think more and more people should continue with their love for the written word, and
Word. Very well said.
with with the digital world and with the internet, we see more and more time being consumed on the internet. What we do need to remember is, books are meditative. While we're still learning to live with the internet, which largely because we're still learning, very unreflective and flighty. So books are contemplative, books are meditative, books are here to stay. And whenever next somebody is writing a book, all that you have to do is look up our website and write an email to us, and we usually do get back to all the submissions that we get within a reasonable amount of time.
So that's the process you go through. Okay. And what's the name of your website, Mr. Arya?
It is wisdomtreeindia.com.
Wisdomtreeindia.com. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Arya, for coming to our show. This is Frank Islam wishing you a great week, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.